Unfortunately, our tweets regarding Sue Bird's return were cause for a fine. Of course, everyone was excited to have her back, but it looks like some of those tweets were a little premature.
I guess it's considered tampering,
Yeah.
but it's like, is Sue Bird going to sign somewhere else that's not Seattle, especially at this part of her career?
I wouldn't say so. They have also chosen to core guard Jewell Loyd. That would mean that she could be back on a 1-year Supermax contract. Of course, it doesn't guarantee anything. She can sign a multi-year deal with Seattle or be traded still. So a little bit of uncertainty there. What do you think this is headed towards?
See, like we talked about before, unlike Breanna Stewart, who said she wants to be back in Seattle, having Sue Bird would help with that. So Sue Bird coming back, and we've got this notion that unless something happens, she's going to be back with Seattle. So yeah. Stewie, again, not worried about. Jewell Loyd, not entirely sure, because at the end of the season, after that loss to Phoenix, in the first round, Jewell Loyd said, I have to look at things. I have to talk with my family. I talk to my friends and see what I want to do. Mm-hmm. That's an indefinite answer. Right. And, as we have looked at it, right, I don't know if we talked about it last week with Jewell Loyd reposting an Instagram story from a housing agent, yes. Congratulations on your new house. But in the back of that photo, the letters Chicago were all spelled out. That's not a good sign, considering that it could just be a second house. It could be Loyd having a home in Chicago where she's from, right? But also as a Chicago Sky, Candace Parker winning the WNBA title last year, wanting to run it back. Uncertain. But funny enough, I do have somewhat of a source here. I have someone who spoke with Jewell Loyd just yesterday, actually, at the Kraken game here in Seattle with some of her teammates, including Mercedes Russell, was asked about being cored and said that she does want to be in Seattle. That could mean, Jewell Loyd is going to, since she's been cored, as you mentioned, going to work out a long-term deal, right? Or at least maybe 2 or 3 years, right?
Yeah.
It could just be her talking to somebody and saying something while her heart is somewhere else. But I'd like to be optimistic about it. But ultimately, if you're asking me to give you a definitive answer and stop dancing around the question, I'm going to lean towards maybe playing out the Supermax deal. I'm going to lean towards that because maybe she wants to reassess, see how things go, because it is Sue Bird's last season, right? And I'm sure the Storm are going to try to reload and just go all out because you want to win a title, put her out on top, right? This may be, hey, I'm here for the ride. Let's help Birdie get out of this. And then, hey, maybe I'm done. I've won 2-3 titles here in Seattle. I'm done, right?
And maybe that's enough time for her to reevaluate where she is in a year as well. So a 1-year Supermax doesn't sound like the worst scenario. Of course, we'd love to have her for longer, but just like you mentioned, luckily we know that Sue is coming back, and we know that Stewie has every intention to come back. With that being said, we do have a couple areas that we would need to fill roles in.
Especially since I think you've got 3 to 4 players on contract currently.
Right. Yeah, it's a very slim list. So we have a couple centers as an option here. We have Tina Charles, Liz Cambage, who would be absolute monsters as centers. I think that would really round out the team. But of course, we're also looking at forwards here. What role do you think we need to address first?
Well, I think you bring up a good point. We look at center, right? You've got Ezi Magbagor, who's young, really young, and has been growing. But to have a really dominant person in the paint would be really big for this team. Because, okay, we look at, again, if we're going with this preconceived notion that the big three comes back.
Yes.
If, fingers crossed and all. You've got Birdie at the point, Jewell at the 2, Stewie at 3, perhaps. Maybe if we're running the 2 double forward look, put Katie Lou at the 4, or you could probably switch Katie Lou at the 3, Stewie at the 4. There was a lot of, if you were to insert a Tina Charles, who led the league in scoring for a good amount of last year, at the center position, that is another threat there. Because Stewie can score from wherever, Jewell can score from wherever. Birdie's one of the best. I think she's an assist leader, all-time assist leader in WNBA history. So can distribute the ball, and then you've got a big woman inside who can. It just gives you another aspect.
Right.
So I think that puts you in. If you were to sign either of those ladies, Tina Charles or Liz Cambage, I think that puts you in as a favorite. Obviously, Vegas is still good. Chicago still got Candace Parker. But either of those women is huge, right? So I would say getting a big woman is a big deal. But also with whatever moves you make at the 5 starting positions, you still need a bench. Because every championship team needs a bench. So ultimately, though, I think if you're able to sign a big name center, that's a big deal.
I read that Tina Charles was interested in winning an WNBA title, of course. And why not come do it with the big 3? It seems like a pretty good, like I said, well-rounded team. So hopefully we do get some interest from some big names like that. And would the big 3 turn into a big 4?
I think that would. And I mean, come and play in a really high-tech arena. Come and play in Seattle. Excuse me. I've heard nothing but good things from people who have played here. And if the arena was able to partially, partially convince Sue Bird to be back, I think it's something that people are going to want to play in. And I'm interested to hear what players think about Climate Pledge Arena from the WNBA, because I've heard players from the NHL who have come to Seattle said, hey, this is a really nice barn. The barn is a word they use for arenas in hockey, which is new to me. I spoke with Philip Grubauer, and he said, oh, this is one of the nicest barns in North America. I'm like, we're not on a farm. But one of the nicer barns in North America. So if they're going to say that, you can only wonder about the WNBA side. And I'm interested to hear about that as well. But yeah, I think you bring up some key point, a big 4. I don't see why not. I mean, there's a lot of talent in this league. But we'll have to see. I mean, free agency is currently officially underway. So we'll have, I'm sure by the time next week we're here, we'll probably have something to talk about.
Definitely.